Welcome to episode 8 of the podcast, and today we're going to be discussing steroid use and abuse and the difference between use and abuse, mainly for men. But I'm sure we'll touch on women a little bit, as it is very naive to think that women are not on juice. I know I've always been very naive, and a lot of the physiques that you see on Instagram, they ain't natural. and it's just sad that not many people talk openly about it. I think especially women. I think, well, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think there are more guys talk about it openly and have, podcasts discussing it. Whereas
I agree. There's definitely a lack of women talking about steroid usage. And, and this has surprised a lot of people. Your favorite female fitness influencer is probably using some form of steroid. And we won't talk about it because, one, we don't want to admit it. But secondly, some of them won't talk about it because, the negative side effects they don't almost want to admit to.
Yeah.
But look, if you love Laura Lee Chapo or whatever her name is, she is going to be doing Anavar Primo or something similar, Clen, to get ready for competition. And that's just a fact. Not I would say 99.999% of all female bikini competitors at a professional level are using some form of steroid.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's just a fact, and same with men. But as we said, men are more openly talking about it. You've got whole sites and forums discussing it. A lot of women don't want to talk about it. But then again, a lot of women don't want to. Won't even admit they're taking steroids, and we're talking about normal women who don't realise that the birth control pill is a steroid.
Exactly.
It has side effects the same as any other steroid. So, there's a massive population of women in this world that are on steroids. More than men.
Without even knowing it.
Without even knowing it, exactly.
Which is really sad, isn't it? And a bit scary.
It is. That is scary. I think that's a scary thing because, you get given, take the birth control pill, given that as a teenage girl, doctors literally just put you on, steroids.
On steroids. Isn't that?
That's the thing. If a guy came up to you in the gym and said, "Hey, here, take the steroids," you would question it a little bit. And you probably say no. Some might say yes, but a good majority of a random person, because a doctor says take this pill, you take it without questioning. And I'm not here to tell people to question their doctors, but I think you should question everything and look at what's best for yourself. But saying that, the side effects. Everything, anything exogenous that you take that your body doesn't actually need you to take has some form of reaction, some sort of, side effect.
It really does. And I mean, we're not going to be talking about the pill. I don't think we have done an episode dedicated to that, have we?
Not fully. We touched on it on a couple of episodes. We've touched on it with Victoria.
We might have to do that, just because it is so interesting. And I think, people just don't realize that, your sex hormones are steroid hormones as well. I think people really don't understand what steroid means.
They are,
And again, like with the pill, you're I think, when you're judging people about steroids and, you're unknowingly taking them, it's all about making informed choice. And that is what we're about, so that we give you the information so you can make an informed choice. And I always think, this is a judgment-free zone. I've from you guys, I've learned so much about sort of, bodybuilding and steroids, and, just coming from thinking oh, no one takes them, to, oh, wow. Yeah. All these chicks are on them.
Here's an interesting thing for you. There is, in South Africa, one time I was there, I was listening to a news report, and it was talk about all the banned athletes in South Africa for taking steroids. People who failed drugs tests. 90% of them were school rugby players.
Yeah, it's a big problem there from the age of like 15 now.
Yeah.
Because
and the schools, I guarantee the schools know about it. Because school rugby in South Africa is big business.
Yeah.
Because people go watch, you have stands and people watching. So, there's people, and my views on kids taking steroids is pretty extreme. It just shouldn't happen. I wouldn't even say it's extreme. I just say it's kind of sensible thinking. But the fact is, I would say, the schools have to bear the responsibility. But that's going off point. But that was an interesting thing I found. It's not just about bodybuilders. A lot of sports. Your favorite track athlete has or is taking steroids right now, and has, because what happens is with most athletes as they prepare for a big race, in their prep they will take steroids to help recovery, help oxygen, manipulation, everything else. Come before the race, they cycle off. A few weeks before, they'll come off. That is so when we get tested, they pass. Now, if they mistime that's when they fail their drugs tests. And it's naive to think that all your favorite athletes aren't taking steroids, because they're talking fine margins of victory. It may be that they're taking things they don't even know is banned yet, or it's a derivative, because they're part of these big programs where coaches are like, oh, let's try this. It hasn't been banned yet, but come the actual time of the race, it's been added to the banned list, or something happens. So that's why you'll find a lot of the top wealthy nations athletes don't get caught, because they're kind of ahead of the curve. But the slightly ones from the poorer nations, or ones with slightly older or non-joined up programs, are the ones that get caught, because there's the coaching level or the doctoring level isn't where the others are.
Yeah, and I think people hear steroids and think big muscles. And
exactly, that's the thing. I would say in the world, bodybuilders are probably only 5-10% of steroid users.
Yeah, big time.
The other sports are way more prevalent, but they're used differently.
Yeah,
it's not like they're not trying to be stacked, and there's various different things. Look at cycling, Lance Armstrong.
Yeah,
and it's naive to think he's the only one ever taking it. Take baseball, A-Rod, and everyone else. If you've ever watched that Netflix documentary about all the baseball players taking steroids,
even NFL, rugby is crazy.
Rugby's no different.
There's big money there, and people will do their best to.
NFL, everyone's juicing.
Oh, they're in.
Everyone's juicing in NFL.
I usually call it like bodybuilders playing. Yeah. Just bodybuilders who are fast.
The thing is, like NFL, because you want we measure certain metrics in NFL. When we're recruiting players, it's like, how tall are you? How quick can you run this in? How strong are you? What's your max bench press? So these are things that lend itself to hit and reduce and improving those times, those strengths, a bit of size. So so it's not, when people think about steroids, they think about bodybuilders. That's because bodybuilders are the only ones openly talking about it. And that's just a fact. There's so much usage in the world of various things. It's important to be aware that it's not just bodybuilders. It's pretty much most sports at some point probably at least someone has used steroids to get ahead.
I think enhancements, people should realize by now, they're a big part of sports. That's why sports science exists. And yes, some people abuse, some use, I guess, but as long as there's sports and there's big money, people will be enhanced, whether it's football, whether it's bodybuilding, whether it's rugby. I think it's here to stay.
Like human nature is always to push. Like to push the genetic limits. Like you can reach the genetic ceiling, But I don't know, I think, it's just that curiosity, like how far can I push it? How far can I go?
We're talking fine, and when you're talking, and in sport, and sort of top sport, we're talking fine margins between each competitor. To be the best in the world, or being number 10, is almost 0.001%. So if you can just tip something in your favour, you can go from being number 10 in the world to number 1 in the world. Because everyone in the top has got similar genetics. There's a few outliers, like someone like Usain Bolt. When he was in his prime, no one was near him.
Yeah.
Genetically, that's the case. I would probably argue he used steroids at some point. He was still already better than everyone else. But that's just because that is the normality of it all.
Yeah.
So, and then, it does get us into this thing of use and abuse, use, don't abuse. And I think where sport has probably got it better than bodybuilding is the using part without the abusing part.
Yeah,
Mhm.
control usage with the help of doctors or sports.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a major difference. I think using is using just enough to achieve the goal you want. Now, with bodybuilding, the goal is so subjective. You're never going to be big enough. You're never going to be strong enough. That lends itself to people going, more is better.
Mhm.
Where actually recently people have realised more isn't better. It's about what finding the maximal. It's something Dr. Dean talks about. It's called maximum safe dosage
Mhm.
for you, and it's basically looking at and no dosage is safe per se, but it's about finding what your body tolerates most and then keeping to that.
Mhm.
Rather than going beyond that, where you're just making yourself essentially putting yourself in a health risk without any actual gain from it.
Yeah, and I think also when it comes to bodybuilding, I find it's where not everyone is genetically built to be as someone else. So where a lot of abuse comes in is when everyone wants to be big, and it's like, wait, he's using a small amount that I'm using and nothing's happening. So you know what? I'm just going to keep pushing until I see some results. And then it ends up, you find you're in the dangerous zones. And I think with bodybuilding, it's where everyone can gym, people enjoy. It's different from, I guess, pro bodybuilders. The best will be there. Like, it doesn't matter how much they use. But when you're just trying to be healthy, so to speak, and then now you're using doses that put you at risk, it's almost like you're not built for that. So obviously, for you to reach a certain point, you'll have to abuse.
And I think here's the thing: it's knowing where's safe, and the only way of doing that is looking for health markers.
Yeah.
It's looking at what's happening. So when we look at steroids, obviously we have we're talking about things that affect sex hormones. But the knock-on effect of that is they're made of chemicals, so your liver has to process it. Your kidneys then have to deal with your increased viscosity of blood.
Yeah, your heart.
So blood gets your blood, you get increased your red blood cell count, so blood gets thicker. That increases your blood pressure. Your kidney then has to try and clean your blood and clean everything out with a higher pressure. So it's like turning on a really high hose and putting it through a cheese bag and hoping it doesn't tear. That's basically it. So the more you use, the higher that pressure goes. So if you're not watching your blood pressures, or you're not using blood pressure medication to keep that down, what happens is you damage your kidney, and that's pretty much irreversible. Like serious kidney damage is irreversible. So there's a lot of guys using steroids and not doing any tests. And I think, when you are using rather than abusing, obviously in an ideal world, it's in a doctor-based setting, and the doctor's going to say, and doctors do prescribe actual steroids. Doctors prescribe human growth hormone to kids that who aren't growing fully. So they are done in situations where they can be monitored. And with that monitoring, you know, obviously, doctors will do things like check bloods. Now, with the average guy on the street, they're happy to spend the money on the steroids, but not happy to spend the money on the tests. And they don't realise that, you know, not even, you know, and I always say the minimum, and, you know, we have a discussion with Scott not so long ago, was, you know, the minimum you should do is blood pressure cuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a minimum. You know, if you're not willing to buy yourself even a blood pressure cuff,
You're just taking risks.
you're taking risks for no reason, because you know that's the first thing you want to get control of your blood pressure, because that's what's going to damage your kidneys. You know, your liver's pretty good at regenerating. You can get a few things like liposmal glutathione to help you know liver things, but you know that higher blood pressure will affect your kidneys, but then it also affects your heart.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there's also, and people don't realize that taking because your sex hormones help you know control your cholesterol levels. So you know what you find is when you're using steroids is your LDL increases, your HDL decreases, especially depending on you know certain types of steroids have more of effect. A lot of the orals really affect your lipid profiles. Oral Winstrol, oral Anavar, these things will really affect your lipids, and that in turn, so now you've got thicker blood, higher cholesterol, potential for more clotting,
blood pressure.
yeah, so I'm saying, you know, you got all these things now you stack it up, but you've not been checking any of them, so you don't know when to, you know, come on, come off, you know, and that's the other thing is people don't, and this is how to spot, you know, use versus abuse. A user will have a defined period of time. They will go, I'm going to use these steroids for 8 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever it is. Go, you know, it's either 8 or 12 weeks in bodybuilding world. Everything's done like that for some bizarre reason. This is easier math. So we do like 12 weeks on, and then what you should do is come off and maybe do like you know PCT or come off completely, you know, depending on you know how your body reacts, and you know, and that's the thing is being able to check that. So the reality is there's a lot of guys just on steroids all year round. And I don't mean like TRT. Yeah, that's the other thing. TRT is prescribed by a doctor. Testosterone replacement therapy. So doctors know there's a health benefit to steroids, and there is. There's a health benefit if you are low testosterone, having testosterone replacement therapy. That is something men should be jumping upon if they feel, if they're, you know, if you're in your 40s, you start feeling a bit lethargic, speak to your doctor, get your testosterone levels checked.
Yeah.
And if they're low, it's healthier to take testosterone replacement therapy. In some countries, it comes as a cream. Some places, it'd be an injection that you do, you know, once every 10 days, you know, sort of 250 mg every 10 days, or, you know, it might be a weekly injection of, you know, or works out to be like 100 mg a week. So, you know, and that's fine. That's use because, you know, you've got someone checking you. The doctor's going to check your bloods, probably re-prescribe, check your bloods. But there's a lot of guys just doing things for themselves out in this world, and young guys who are blasting drugs all year round because they don't want to come off because they think they're going to shrink. Well, if you've been on steroids and you've not built any muscle, then you're definitely doing it wrong.
Yeah. And I think
you haven't got your diet and training in place.
Yeah. No, I was going to say another thing with TRT, it's meant to keep you in your normal healthy ranges. So if you're on bulks of you know, anabolic and androgenic steroids and they're way above, you're not on TRT, you're on a cycle. Just, you know, because I know a lot of people.
Yeah, and there's a joke in bodybuilding, like, you know, old retired bodybuilders are on TRT, and they say we're on 250.
Yeah, it's like
TRT, and it's like, well, that's not TRT.
It's not.
You know, it's not because you're actually still higher than what's physiologically normal.
Yeah.
They go, oh, TRT for me. Well, no, you just like being over. You're so used to being so past normal that being normal, it doesn't feel normal to them. So they want to be on a little bit beyond normal.
Yeah, and I think that's a good. Well, we'll probably go back, but it brings the point of a lot of people talk about steroids and mental health, and it's like you've said, it's where people, I guess, abuse to the point it's almost scary to be smaller, and this can lead to a lot of people being depressed, and it's like I can't imagine going back to that size. So you know what, I'll call my TRT 350 milligrams every
And I
week.
think that's why, and this is why it's more likely to be abused in bodybuilding versus other sports.
Yeah.
Take someone like a CrossFitter who's using steroids, because believe it or not, CrossFitters use steroids, people at the top
Big
end.
time.
Yeah.
Big time.
Right? They're doing it purely for an athletic goal.
Yeah.
Once they've achieved that goal and retired, they're not really that fussed about taking steroids ever again.
Yeah.
Same with sprinters, everything else. And that's why when you look at a lot of pundits, look at a lot of the pundits on sports stations, they were massive when they were, running and things. They look a lot smaller nowadays. That's because they just come off it. It's like, come off.
I stopped training.
Yeah, and the thing is that they were never on a huge amount. But with bodybuilding, it's there's a lot of body dysmorphia tied into bodybuilding. There's a lot of mental health issues that bodybuilding was being used to mask, bury, whatever you want to say, and so when they retire, they still have these issues,
It takes long.
and they don't want to actually, we've got so used to walking, their personalities become being massive. They've tied their personality to their physique, and that's half the issue. So when they retire, it's like, oh, who am I now? Oh, I'm just gonna keep using steroids and be a little bit big so I can have jacked arms still. And that's that. But I think that's the difference between use and abuse. Use is controlled and for a specific goal. Abuse is I am using this even when I don't really need to.
Yeah.
And and the sad thing is, it is even with women as well. As you've said, female bikini athletes, wellness, figure, you name it, we're all using something, and to various degrees.
Yeah.
And there is side effects. Go on,
No, I was just going to say, and in a place like Kenya where people don't talk about it, people lie, because like the competitors, they'll lie on social media where you're thinking, oh, she looks good all year, or he, and they themselves don't even know what they're doing, so it's a bit risky.
Well, we've heard of I've heard of the female competitors, not bikini competitors, but like people a bit higher up.
Yeah.
Females using some really serious steroids to using the same as what the guys are using.
The guys,
Training. Their coach is a guy. He uses this, so I'm going to use the same.
Yeah, putting them on test
and that's the thing. It's like women have to realize any amount of steroid you take has a knock-on side effect. Now, there's various degrees depending on dosage, but with everything, there's going to be a certain level of virilization. And for those women listening, virilization is the road to becoming a man, essentially. It is your voice starts to get deeper. You start growing more hair, your jaw gets thicker, your clitoris gets bigger. These things are just part of it. Sex drive increases, and this is a thing. And it's not just doing it once. And you may not even notice. It's like you've been doing it for a few years. If you were to look at a photo of yourself now versus then, you might notice a difference, and you might not notice all the small changes, but looking from one to the other, it's like a before and after type thing. You don't notice day to day with changes, but 10 years down the road, you look like a whole different person. And this is what happens to a lot of the female bodybuilders we see at the top level. They didn't set out to try and look so masculine, thick jaws and deep voices, but that's just what's happened over time.
Yeah.
Little. changes. So there's safer ways for women, and I think with bikini athletes, you see at the IFBB, they tend to use like low dose stuff with much aromatization and stuff, things that aren't going to massively have massive side effects, things like Anavar, Primo, but in low dosage. Because let's be clear, men have relatively high levels of testosterone naturally. That's why we are essentially men. That's why we grow facial hair and everything else. Women have a little bit of testosterone, and every woman has testosterone. Now, when you take exogenous testosterone, the closer you get to where men's normal is is a road to virilization. So it's you can keep quite low and just put your range up a touch, and you'll see a change in women. But it's naive to think for any women there's going to be no side effects, and they're not going to end up with any level of virilization.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, for women as well, like you said, Andy, there's all these knock-on effects, and maybe when you're competing or you're younger and you're thinking about taking these things, you're not thinking about your fertility and how that's going to affect you in your 30s, sort of, and beyond. And where I've seen on social media where women say they take something, that is all that they'll say, is that they take something. They won't say what it is, how they're going about it, which is the most important thing. Like, am I working with a doctor? Am I doing my bloods? And then most importantly, being like, look, this is my job, or something like that. Like, you don't need to do what I'm doing. I think it's kind of, if you want to be in the top tier of bodybuilding as a man or a woman, yeah, you're going to have to take steroids and think about the sacrifices that you're going to make to your health for that. But it's all about trying to mitigate those and doing as much research as you can. And Andy, like you said at the beginning, like if you're under 20 and you're taking them, and especially when you're that young and maybe it's your coach telling you, you're not going to argue. You're going to be jacked and strong. What's wrong with that?
I think with kids, under even up to 25, your testosterone levels are through the roof.
Yeah,
if you're eating good and training hard, you will see massive gains just by being young.
Yeah. But I remember being younger and I was ready to be experimental. I'm sure if I always say this, it was the point I wanted to sort of go for the pro card. If I was in that environment, I would say I guess South Africa is way ahead, Europe, where the knowledge is there, the coaches are there, and I know if I was in that environment, I wouldn't have thought twice. That's for sure. So
that's because you're less risk adverse when you're younger.
It's like let's
go. You're willing to take risks because you're not thinking about settling down. You're not thinking about trying to have a family there. You're not worried about actually your life finishing a bit earlier because it still seems like so far away. It's like, oh yeah, I'll lose a couple of years of my life.
Yes, it's just want to look good. That's what you kind of
but don't
care
you
about.
I always think I feel bodybuilding has contributed to a lot of hormonal knowledge because of the way they're experimental.
I do think because there's not any universities, science are not going to fund and research bodies aren't going to fund research into athletic steroid usage. They're not. It's just not going to happen. So where do you get your knowledge from? And the reality is, steroids in bodybuilding has built a big platform of knowledge, and with more in the male section because guys are willing to talk about it. I must admit I've not read any of the girls' logs on Trained by JP, but that's Kai. I don't think anyone massively talks about it.
Even what's her name? The guy, Gail. The
Gail.
Yeah. There's and another wellness athlete. They do.
Kira
Yes,
Jetson.
yes.
She's massive. She's young as well, and she's smashed steroids.
21. Yeah,
Yeah.
they post
like
on. They do their logs, their meals, their bloods, and it does. I think that's really good information for the women because they're all different. Like I guess Kai does her jiu-jitsu, bodybuilding, one's figure and the other one's wellness. So it just shows the differences.
But the reality is, outside of the Train by JP app,
All right.
Awesome.
we're up to.
Commercial break, I guess.
Oh, you've gone off sound.
Yeah,
I thought you'd stop there.
I'd muted those, yeah. Let me go open.
I'll go out. But yeah, so I think, with men, we know a lot more than with women. And so because of male bodybuilders openly talk about it. And more the British side because here's the thing. Steroids are very much illegal in America.
Yeah.
You can go to prison for steroids. In the UK, it's not a grey area. It's legal to own steroids and have them in your possession. It's illegal to sell steroids. It's illegal to buy steroids.
Gosh.
Yeah, technically it's illegal to buy steroids, but if you're found with steroids, that's fine.
Yeah. I guess the law is help when it comes to knowledge.
Yeah, so I think the British side, because it's a little bit more, it's okay to discuss steroids.
Yeah, it really helps because even younger guys end up learning, and Jesus, wait. Yeah.
In Kenya, I actually don't know if there even is a law against steroids.
I don't know. Oh gosh, I've talked to a few doctors, and I know it's almost taboo. It's something they don't really talk about a lot.
I think it's probably a bit like it's a prescription drug. If you're found with it without a prescription,
yeah,
okay, prescription drug, you get into trouble. But if a doctor's prescribed you something, that's fine.
But problem is, I talked to a few, just asking around, and the questions they ask is like, why? And I've never even seen that here, and I'm not sure if they're lying or they just don't know.
Maybe there's testosterone somewhere, but look, endocrinology in Kenya is not a massive field studied by doctors. There's no men's sexual health doctors. I think there's discussion. There's one guy claiming to be, I think, who's giving people TRT, which doesn't look like to me. But anyway, the reality is, in the UK, it's easier for people to talk about steroid usage. Yeah, but there is a lot of good knowledge now, and you check on YouTube or podcasts.
Yeah.
You can learn a lot more. Gone are the days where you went up to the biggest guy in a gym and say, "Hey, how do I get bigger? You got to take this D-bowl."
Yeah.
To take this Deca, and that's there's actual knowledge out there, and it's now about looking at safe models of usage. And the way you look at Victor Black will say he came up with safe models of usage, so we'll give him props there. But a lot of the guys talk about it now, like Callum, Dean. It's about using small amounts of different steroids.
Yeah.
Because everything works on a different pathway. So, for instance, you would have your testosterone base. You add some Primo into the mix because they work on a different pathway. Because Primo has considerably less side effects, but it's less androgenic. So you get less muscle growth per mg, microgram than you will with just testosterone, but you get less side effects. And then you got something like Trenbolone, which is a north-free receptor thing. So you can have things on different affecting different receptors, and it's safer than just taking large amounts of one thing. And that's the idea, is because you're not overloading any one system.
Yeah, and your body does get used to the compounds after a while anyway.
But as I said, what a lot of young people need to realize is, not young people, but people getting into steroids, should say, is a small amount of testosterone will have a big impact. You don't need to take huge amounts of anything, because once you've checked your testosterone levels, and my natural testosterone levels naturally high, if I was to take testosterone on top of that, then it becomes very super physiological with a very, very small amount, because it's already at the top, on the high end of normal. Now, if you are someone who's got low testosterone naturally, and you're feeling the effects of that, you're feeling depressed, lethargic, low libido, erectile dysfunction, these things, and it's caused by low testosterone. To be super physiological, you will need a little bit more, because you're already low. So what you're putting on top of, so understand that if you are just trying to be normal, a small amount on top of your low testosterone will be normal. It'll probably be even over normal, even with a tiny amount. So if you put your testosterone up, what do you think is going to happen? All your other sex hormones go out of whack. Even with a small amount of testosterone, but it's what you can kind of live with. It's like so for instance, your estrogen levels increase. Your prolactin levels can increase, and this is why guys get gynecomastia, because their prolactin levels have increased. Because testosterone, the higher your testosterone goes, the higher these other hormones swing back round, and then that's why a lot of bodybuilders will use anti-aromatizing inhibitors, AIs, which is like to reduce your estrogen levels. So which are estrogen's there for a reason. It's cardiovascular protective. On the whole, so by having an AI, you're then reducing it almost too much, and you're putting your health at risk there. So what's considered now is you shouldn't necessarily need an AI if you have keep your testosterone levels, your test base low. My understanding is then your estrogen shouldn't go too high. I mean, if you have primo on top of that, which doesn't massively affect your estrogen and can keep the estrogen low, it actually helps with. Therefore, so you test primo, you'll have higher testosterone, estrogen kept within normal range, and you feel better. So it's about knowledge, and when guys want to just do everything all at once, get me on the trend. Fact is, you don't necessarily ever need trend. It's it's like it's made for cows. Are you a cow? But I've heard even a small amount of trend with primo and test, because they all work on different pathways, actually is safer than doing just high level testosterone, because we're talking low levels of each one, because they work on different pathways. So, but so with there is, and that's the difference between use and abuse. It's having that knowledge to look and then check your bloods and just use what's enough for like as we say with athletes, and using enough for the task you try to achieve, and not more.
Yeah, I think if you can't take note of like your nutrition and training, I don't think you have any business going into, because it's work. It's not people.
Well, it's expensive as well.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, though. This is what you said, Leon. If people think you can just take steroids.
Yeah,
you always see a picture of a bodybuilder on Instagram, and someone say, "Oh yeah, we can all look like that with steroids." The answer is you can't. for one was a thing called genetics. I could put certain people on steroids and they would never even look like they trained. It's just a fact. There is people that respond better, but there's people that are healthier from taking steroids because their body handles it better, so we don't have the big swings. And there's people that they take a little bit of testosterone, and we've got like really bad acne on the back, and we get massive side effects. They're not made to take it. So but what everyone should have in common is they should be hitting all their meals, training really hard, because you need to do that first. And all these top bodybuilders nailed that before they ever touched a steroid.
Yep.
And that's just a fact. A lot of the guys are like, I started training and I got really good and I put on a lot of muscle, and then I took some steroids and became a pro. That's kind of how that works. It's not like, oh yeah, I got to the gym, I started taking steroids and training all at the same day, which is like what a lot of young guys think they need to do.
Yeah.
It's almost like supplements. It's like, I'm in the gym now. What should I take? That's usually the first question everyone asks. It's never what should I eat? Because I know younger guys will always DM and it's like, I started the gym. What supplements can I get? it's always having the priorities wrong.
I guess that's what social media throws at you. You always see your influencer with their stack that they take. All of them. No one is promoting get the basics right first, and because they're being paid by supplement companies. So
on sponsorships.
And I think if you're going to take it, that's your choice. Your choice. Like, go for it. But I think such a huge message is just, if you're going to do it properly, it is going to be expensive, especially if you're doing it here. Because you're going to have to do blood work. And if you've listened to previous episodes, that is not cheap yet. And if you want to be healthy, you are going to need to do your blood work. You have to.
And here's the thing people don't realize. So if you're going to do a cycle of steroids, you want to do your blood work before. See what your normal range is. Take steroids, wait 5 weeks, depending on the ester of steroids. So take testosterone. That's a 5-week. Testosterone. So that is the ester.
Okay.
So how long it lasts in your system. It takes how long it takes to be fully at largest plasma levels in your system. So you're talking about 5 weeks into a cycle. Do your blood. Finish your cycle. Wait 5 weeks and take your blood. So you've now got. And a lot of people, would benefit from seeing it at the end of their cycle as well, before they come off it, to see their blood at their worst, so you can see what's happened on the whole cycle. And because it then takes 5 weeks to come out of your blood system, because it's got long acting ester, that's why you do want it 5 weeks after coming off to see it's all out. And then you'll see like a picture there. So that's full blood tests.
Yeah, and that's
full profiles.
That's a lot, unless you've got great insurance here. And then on top of that, if you're new to this, I would do it with a coach who knows what they're doing. So taking that into account. I mean, maybe not working with a coach all the time, but at least doing a consultation with a coach who can read your blood work, who can tell you what to take, who can be like, no, you can just start with XYZ, like Annie's saying, at this small dose. That's all you need. And then just getting it here. I mean, it's not easy to get stuff here. So you've got to think through all of that too. And I don't think it should be a taboo topic. And you'd rather know where to get the good stuff than getting, I don't know, some Chinese.
And there's a thing, like, people will talk about smoking weed quite openly. People talk about drinking quite openly. I know people talk about taking cocaine quite openly. Each to their own. Everything, is a personal choice. And when people are snorting cocaine or drinking excessively, there is a health risk to that. You weigh that up in your head when you do it as a personal choice. Steroids is no different. You just need to have the knowledge that how is this affecting or is going to affect me, and is it worth it for me and what I want to achieve?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And only a person, an individual can ever answer that.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess when everyone is thinking or wants to start it, it's from a good place. I guess it's not like alcohol or the lifestyle drugs. It's where I can build muscle, look good. I guess it comes from a place of longevity and health, and everyone wants to look and feel good. But if you do not, take care of your blood work and your nutrition and all these other things, then it now becomes a problem. Something that would have been a positive in your life now becomes starts causing issues because you just
Well, you
Sure.
don't. You've
Yeah.
We're
abused.
back to that. Well, the thing is, as I say, we're back to that thing: use versus abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You are beyond what you actually needed. You are beyond what was, relatively safe to you. So nothing's safe. It's not,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then again, you have people doing things like Botox, fillers,
Yeah.
and
That's
everything. That's not necessarily safe. And but people are like, oh yeah, it helps me with my confidence. Well, for some people, take steroids, building muscles to help them with their confidence.
Yeah.
So everyone's got a choice, but you've got to go in knowing full well that it's not healthy. You're not even even small. Apart from like properly done TRT is healthier than having low testosterone.
Yeah.
But if you're doing super TRT like some of the bodybuilders are, that's unhealthy. Because and it's about knowing that the difference and having the knowledge of what you're actually doing or working with someone who has knowledge. And it's great. If you're in the States, you can go to a longevity clinic and speak to a doctor who can prescribe testosterone.
Yeah, I think
Get tested.
Yeah, a lot of lifestyle diseases in men are linked to low test.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with finding out if yours is low or not. And you can deal with it. So
I suggest it to a lot of my older, clients over 40, and like do a testosterone test.
Yeah. Just test.
I feel a bit, because sometimes you just feel a bit lethargic, you feel a bit down.
Yeah.
Just do a test, and it might not be anything to do with that. If your testosterone's good, great. Let's check out your SHBG.
Mhm.
If that's high, let's just bring that down with some natural stuff like boron. This is the other thing. You don't necessarily, if your free test levels are low, like your test levels can look like they're normal and still be low because of
Yeah.
SHBG. So that's something you may want. People could even just sort out themselves to get a bit of a test boost rather than take testosterone.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah.
That's just a lot of that is lifestyle, isn't
Yeah,
it? Like
good.
just working on that.
Better sleep would be a great start for that.
Drink less
sleep,
alcohol.
your stress, your alcohol,
Drink, yeah. Just
exposure to toxins, all of that. But I mean, so if someone listening, in their 40s is like, oh, TRT sounds TRT is sounding like it's where it's at.
It's sad,
What would you say to them? Like, who would you recommend they go to?
I would first, I don't know in Kenya who, from TRT doctor. I would first go to get my blood work done.
Yeah.
They tell you what your normal ranges are, what we are.
Mm.
And then if you're shown as normal on the range, but you still feel like you've got things like erectile dysfunction, low libido, bit depressed. Now, it could be that you're still low testosterone for you, and when you were younger you had high testosterone and it's gone down. That's low for you. Just because it's normal for the general population doesn't mean it's normal for you. So there's still that. But the reality is, if you're showing as low on blood work, then you'll need to try and find a doctor. If you can't find a doctor, then it's a little bit tricky. You go, you can do it self-administer, but that becomes a bit trickier because you got to keep doing blood tests. And and you could do, for instance, 100 or 75 micrograms of a little bit of testosterone a week, which is probably true TRT, 75 to 100. It's true. I know people do 150 because it just makes them feel better. As in that's still would class as TRT depending on the individual. And that's the thing. it's very individualistic. So you can't just say, hey, take this. You know, as I said, you know, people don't want to inject those. So, you know, if you can, you know, for proper TRT clinics in US, UK, well, not really TRT clinics, but your GP in the UK,
Yeah.
they can prescribe a testosterone replacement cream. You know, and you know, so that is going to make a big difference. But we're talking; these are quite low dosage
Yeah.
testosterone. And, you know, as I said, it's probably no more than 100 milligrams, you know, a week, every two, you know, even every 10 days. So it varies. But in Nairobi, first place to start is actually checking your blood. Then finding, maybe speaking to a general medicine doctor, showing them your blood work, showing them, and then trying to work out if any of the clinics actually can try to find the clinic that can actually prescribe. If
Yeah.
not, you can get a prescription from your doctor, go abroad, buy it, and bring it in to Kenya with your prescription.
Yeah. And
So
yeah. Or you could just do a consult like with someone like Dr. Dean.
yeah, you can speak to Dr. Dean. There's you speak to lots of people, to discuss your blood work. But if you are genuinely low in TRT, there are specific TRT doctors in this world, which should be a good first call because they can write your prescription. And having a prescription for testosterone means you can travel in it
you can have it.
Good. That's a good point.
You can fly in carrying it, and you get stopped and go, "Here's my prescription."
Yeah, good.
Yeah, no, I think
good
that's
luck
a
getting
really
that in Kenya. Yeah,
good point to have that. But I guess, I mean, anyone listening, you can always DM Leon or Andy if you want more info on like who to talk to as well.
Yeah.
Or like where to get testosterone if you're if you are traveling and you want to get some
for health purposes only.
we're talking for health purposes.
Don't message me about where to get drugs from.
No, this is
not for a local bodybuilding.
Okay, so for any man or woman listening who's like, okay, give me the juice, I want the good stuff, what advice would you give them, like step by step?
Look, reality is, where's your blood work at?
Yeah, I think.
What's your goal? If someone came to me and said, I want to do steroids, I go, why? First thing is why? Because the reality is, for a local Kenyan show, especially for women, you don't need to take anything. That's a fact. It's, there's a lot of women that are not taking anything. Just be the best you can be. Now, if you've been consistently brilliant at what you do and you want to take it to the next level, that's different. You've nailed your dieting, you've nailed your training, and this goes to guys as well. Then, once everything's ticked off, and you want to take your physique to the next level, then start researching. Listen to podcasts, going on things like Blood, Sweat and Gear on Think Big Media. Listen to those guys. Listen to Scott Stevenson. Listen to Trained by JP. Have a look at some of his stuff. And that's just your base. That's just base knowledge. And then get your bloods done, because you may not even need to, or do your bloods while you're doing your research, because you might not even need to. You might have low testosterone where first things first, let's sort that out. You might have health issues that you want to sort out first. If you've already got high blood pressure, poor kidney health, you shouldn't even be, poor heart health, you shouldn't even be thinking about going anywhere near a steroid. If you've got a history of sudden cardiac arrest in your family, stay away from steroids, because what you don't want to do is suddenly increase the thickness of your blood and add a potential clotting issue. To a heart that's potentially genetically, got genetic health issues. If you've got things like liver bounce back, but kidneys don't, liver, heart, if you've got genetic issues, just don't risk it. So, so it's about knowing how healthy you are to start with. Then speaking to the right people. Yes, have a consultation with Dr. Dean. Have a consultation with someone like, get a coach who knows something. Have a consultation with people like Victor Black, with different, Dave Crossland, these type people that have discussed usage and safe usage and debated it. Everyone's slightly different. Get a coach like Callum, from us, formerly of Muscle Mentors, now Team Pro Coach.
Mhm.
These guys who've got a vast knowledge on the subject and do their research and check with other people. Is make it as scientific as we can, just to be safe. What you don't want to do is go, I'm ready to take steroids, and just find the biggest guy in the gym and go, all right, where do I get steroids from?
In my back.
Because unless that guy's got decent knowledge, you can end up with anything. As I've heard guys just taking Winstrol all year round, not realizing it's one of the worst for your lipids, and, for your liver health in general. So be aware of the health risks. Be aware that it's got potential to destroy your life. Be aware that if you've got, depending, say if you decide to take something like growth hormone, be aware that if you've got an underlying cancer cell, that accelerate the rate of growth. There's a lot of negatives to taking it. If, however, you've got a really strong goal, and you want to do it for that goal, then it's your choice. Just be aware of these things, but be aware of where your health is. Be aware, take the right advice, keep on top of your bloods, and use just enough to achieve your goal, and then come off. And then if you come off, you'll need to have some assistance going off. Some people can just come off completely and their levels bounce back. Other people come off and they need PCT, it's post-cycle therapy. Some people, if you've got naturally low testosterone, will just need to come off back to TRT. And remember this: if you've been using steroids for a while, you may not be able to produce a baby anymore. And there's ways around that. There's also trying to increase fertility using HCG. So and other things, just to bring up sperm count, things like that. For ladies, sadly, if you've been on steroids for a while, you may never be able to have a child. And that's the reality of it's knowing the reality before you do it. And how healthy you are, and get true assistance.
And really, in our last episode, we're talking all about budgeting. Budget for this, because it's going to be expensive, and if it's something you really want and you want to do it in as healthy way as possible, it is going to cost you. So if you're in your 20s and you want to get jacked, this is not the way for you. You will need to set aside some serious money for your blood tests, for your coach, to get the drugs, whatever you're taking,
and the supporting supplements.
The supporting supplements, and then if you need PCT, the PCT. So it's, again, that's what I understand. You have a goal. If you're just doing this to look good, to me that's a bit of a waste of money. But if there's a serious performance goal, a serious health goal, that's fine. But just like we've said, do as much research as you can and make sure you've budgeted for this, because if you're doing it properly, it's not going to be cheap. So I think that kind of sums all of that up for this episode. And if you want more info on who you can consult with, I'll try and put some names in the show notes for you. I'll get them from Andy and Leon, or you can just slide into their DMs.
I'm happy to answer genuine questions, not where can I get steroids from, which I just I don't know why.
The most frequently asked question.
Let's get ask some serious ones if you are going to be serious about it, and Andy and Leon can point you in the right direction.
There
if
many
you
good
are
guys out there.
there's some good coaches out there, but yeah, there's also some bad ones. So they can hopefully point you in the right way. Yeah, I hope this episode was interesting. All right, let's go get some juice, guys. We've got to look pumped for this podcast.
Orange juice.
Yeah, orange juice. And yes, apologies for all the dogs in this one. They had a lot to say.
Yeah. It's all right.
All right, we'll see you in the next one.
Bye-bye.